Warren Mills looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Kara, you'll never survive alone." Then he pushed my suitcase toward the front door, like 32 years of marriage could fit inside one bag. My son stood silent. My daughter-in-law looked away. And I left with nothing but a trembling heart and an old box of papers I almost threw away. 6 months later, Warren called me at midnight. His voice was shaking. "Kara, please, I need your help." And the strangest part was by then, I was the only person who could save him. If you've ever been underestimated by someone you loved, please like this video and subscribe. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place, and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I truly read every comment. For 32 years, I believed my marriage was safe. Not perfect, not romantic like the movies, but safe. That was the word I used whenever my friends at church asked how Warren and I were doing. Safe, steady, familiar. We lived in a 2-story house in Columbus, Ohio, with pale blue shutters, a narrow front porch, and a maple tree that dropped red leaves across the driveway every October. From the outside, we looked like the kind of couple people trusted. Warren Mills owned a small home repair company called Mills Home Solutions. I was the wife who answered the phone when his receptionist called in sick, packed his lunch when he had early jobs, remembered every birthday, every dentist appointment, every family dinner. People used to say Kara Warren is lucky to have you. And I would smile because for a long time, I thought that meant I mattered. But inside our house, the truth sounded different. It sounded like Warren sighing whenever I asked about money. "Kara, don't worry your head about that." It sounded like him taking the checkbook from my hand at the kitchen table. "I've got it handled." It sounded like him laughing when I mentioned maybe getting a part-time job after Brandon moved out. "At your age, who's going to hire you now?" He always said those things with a little smile, like he was joking. And because I wanted peace more than I wanted an argument, I smiled too. That was one of the first ways I disappeared. Quietly, politely, one small surrender at a time. Our son Brandon was 31 by then. He had married Melissa 2 years earlier, and they lived only 20 minutes away. Brandon had always been close to his father in a complicated way. Warren was hard on him growing up, always pushing him to be tougher, sharper, more practical. I was the soft place Brandon came to when Warren's words cut too deep. But after he got married, something shifted. He started calling less, visiting less. And when he did come over, he seemed careful around Warren, like a grown man still waiting for his father's approval. Melissa was polite but never warm. She worked in marketing, wore neat cream-colored sweaters, and always looked at our house as if she were mentally rearranging it. She once told me, "You know, Kara, you could really modernize this place if you let Warren make the decisions." I remember standing there with a dish towel in my hand, looking at the curtains I had sewn myself 20 years earlier. I said, "I like it the way it is." She smiled and said, "Of course you do." There was something in her tone that made me feel old in my own kitchen. Still, I told myself I was being sensitive. Women of my generation were trained to smooth things over. We swallowed discomfort and called it grace. We excused cruelty and called it stress. We stayed silent and called it loyalty. Warren's company had once done well. He had 3 crews, steady clients, and a reputation for being dependable. But in the last year, I noticed changes. He came home later. He snapped at phone calls. He stopped leaving invoices on the desk in the den. When I walked in while he was looking at bank statements, he would close the laptop too quickly. One evening, I found a notice from a supplier tucked beneath a stack of newspapers. It said an account was overdue. Not by a little, by thousands of dollars. My hands went cold. When Warren came home, I placed the notice on the kitchen table. "What is this?" I asked. He looked at it for half a second, then picked it up, and folded it slowly. "Nothing you need to concern yourself with. It says overdue, Warren." His eyes hardened. "And since when do you understand business?" The words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they were loud. They weren't. They were calm, dismissive, final. "I'm your wife," I said quietly. "If something is wrong, I should know." He gave a short laugh. "You want to know what's wrong? Costs are up. Clients are cheap. People don't pay on time. That's business, not some little household budget with coupons and grocery lists." I stood there feeling my face burn. "I only wanted to help." "You help by not making everything emotional." That became his favorite word for me. Emotional. If I asked a question, I was emotional. If I looked hurt, I was emotional. If I disagreed, I was emotional. It was a clever word because it made my feelings sound like a weakness instead of a warning. After that, I started paying closer attention. I noticed Warren taking calls outside on the porch, lowering his voice when I entered the room. I noticed new charges on the credit card statement before he stopped letting paper statements come to the house. I noticed the smell of unfamiliar perfume on his jacket, once faint but real. When I asked where he had been, he said he had met a client. "What client wears perfume like that?" I asked, before I could stop myself. He stared at me. Then he smiled. "Kara, jealousy doesn't suit you." That night, I lay awake beside him while he slept peacefully, his back turned toward me. I stared at the ceiling fan moving in slow circles above us and wondered when my life had become something I had to investigate in secret. The saddest part was not that Warren had changed. It was that maybe he had always been this way, and I had simply spent 32 years explaining him kindly. On Sunday, Brandon and Melissa came over for dinner. I made pot roast mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, and the apple pie Brandon loved as a boy. I wanted the house to feel warm again. I wanted my family around the table. I wanted to believe whatever was happening could still be fixed. Warren was in a good mood that evening, almost too good. He poured himself a second glass of wine and talked loudly about a new contract he claimed would turn everything around. Brandon nodded, eager to believe him. Melissa asked questions about numbers, timelines, expansion. Warren answered her with patience he never gave me. At one point, I said, "Maybe we should be careful until the company is more stable." The table went quiet. Warren slowly set down his fork. He asked. I felt Brandon glance at me. I tried to keep my voice calm. "I just mean with spending. If there are overdue bills," Warren's chair scraped back slightly. "What overdue bills?" My stomach tightened. "The supplier notice," I said. Melissa's eyebrows lifted. Brandon looked confused. Warren smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Kara found one piece of paper, and now she thinks she's my accountant." I didn't say that. "No, but you implied it. I'm worried." "You're always worried." He leaned back, looking at Brandon and Melissa as if inviting them to witness how unreasonable I was. That's what happens when someone has too much free time and not enough understanding of the real world. Something inside me cracked quietly. I looked at my son, hoping he would say something, anything. But Brandon stared down at his plate. Melissa took a sip of water, and Warren kept smiling. That was the first time I understood that silence could feel like betrayal. After dinner, while I washed dishes alone, I heard Warren in the living room laughing with Brandon. Melissa stood near the doorway, watching me dry a serving bowl. "You know," she said softly, "Warren is under a lot of pressure. Maybe it would help if you didn't question him in front of everyone." I looked at her. "In front of everyone," I repeated. "You mean in front of my own family?" She pressed her lips together. "I just think men need respect." I almost laughed, but there was no humor left in me. And women, I asked. What do we need? Melissa didn't answer. That night, after Brandon and Melissa left, Warren didn't speak to me for nearly an hour. He sat in his recliner watching television while I folded a basket of laundry. The house felt too quiet, too heavy. Finally, he muted the TV. You embarrassed me tonight. I kept folding towels. I asked a question. You questioned my authority in my own house. I looked up then. Our house, I said. His face changed. It was only for a second, but I saw it. A flash of anger. Possession. Something cold. Then he stood and walked toward the hallway. Don't start something you can't finish, Kara. I sat there with a towel in my lap, listening to his footsteps disappear upstairs. For the first time in my marriage, I was afraid not of what Warren might say next, but of what he had already decided without telling me. I didn't know it yet, but that dinner was the beginning of the end. And the house I had spent decades turning into a home was about to become the place where I learned how little they thought I was worth. The night Warren told me to leave, it was raining, not a soft rain either. It came down hard against the windows, the kind of cold Ohio rain that makes the whole house feel smaller. I remember that detail because I kept staring at the glass above the kitchen sink, watching the water run down in crooked lines while my life fell apart behind me. It started with a phone call. Warren had been in the den for nearly an hour with the door half closed. I could hear his voice rising and falling sharp one moment, quiet the next. Every few minutes he would say, I told you I'm handling it, or no, don't call the house again. I was in the kitchen pretending to wipe down counters that were already clean. By then, pretending had become a habit. When he finally came out, his face was tight. His jaw worked back and forth like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. I asked, Is everything all right? He didn't answer. He walked to the cabinet, poured himself a drink, and swallowed half of it before turning around. Brandon and Melissa are coming over, he said. I frowned. Tonight? Yes, tonight. It's almost 8. They're on their way. Something about his tone made my stomach drop. Why? He looked at me as if I had asked a foolish question. Because we need to talk as a family. Those words should have sounded comforting. Family. Talk. But coming from Warren, they felt like a warning. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across the living room wall. Brandon and Melissa came in through the front door, shaking rain from their coats. Brandon looked uncomfortable before he even stepped inside. Melissa's eyes moved from Warren to me, then quickly away. No one hugged me. That was when I knew they had already talked without me. Warren told everyone to sit in the living room. He took his recliner, the one angled toward the fireplace like a throne. Brandon sat on the edge of the couch. Melissa sat beside him, her purse still on her lap. I remained standing for a moment, unsure where I belonged in my own home. Kara, Warren said, Sit down. Not please, not honey. Just my name spoken like an instruction. I sat in the armchair near the window. The rain kept tapping at the glass. Warren leaned forward, elbows on his knees. This isn't working anymore. I looked at him. What isn't? This marriage. The room went silent. For a second I thought I had misheard him. 32 years of marriage do not end in a sentence. They end in hospital rooms, in long confessions, in tearful conversations after midnight. They do not end in a living room while your son stares at the carpet and your daughter-in-law clutches her purse. But Warren continued. I've carried this family for decades, he said. I've paid the bills. I've built the business. I've made the hard decisions. And lately, all I get from you is suspicion, questions, and disrespect. My mouth went dry. Warren, I asked about overdue bills because I was worried. He laughed once without humor. There it is again. Worried. You hide behind that word every time you want control. Control, I repeated. I don't even know what's in our bank account. Melissa shifted slightly. Brandon whispered, "Dad." Warren held up a hand, silencing him. Then he looked straight at me. That's because you don't understand money, Kara. You never have. You understand casseroles, church potlucks, and clipping coupons. That's it. The words landed in the room like broken glass. I looked at Brandon. My son. My boy. The child I had rocked through fevers driven to baseball practice stayed up with when his heart was broken at 17. He did not look at me. "Brandon?" I said softly. His face tightened, but he kept his eyes down. Melissa finally spoke. "Kara, maybe this is for the best. Sometimes people grow apart." I turned to her slowly. "Is that what he told you?" Her cheeks flushed. "I'm just saying maybe Warren needs space." "Space?" I said. From his wife, Warren stood then. "Don't make this dramatic." I almost smiled because the word was so familiar. Dramatic, emotional, sensitive. All the little labels he used to make my pain sound unreasonable. "What exactly are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying I want a separation." My hands went numb. "A separation?" I repeated. "Yes." For how long he looked toward the hallway, then back at me. "That depends on you." "What does that mean?" "It means you need to leave tonight." For a moment, I could not breathe. The rain sounded louder. The room seemed to tilt. I looked around at the walls I had painted, the family photos I had framed, the blanket I had crocheted folded over the couch. Every corner of that house held some part of my life. Birthday candles, Christmas mornings, arguments whispered after Brandon went to bed. My mother's last Thanksgiving before she passed. The dent in the baseboard from Brandon's toy truck when he was 5. And Warren was speaking as if I were a guest who had overstayed. "This is my home," I said. Warren's eyes narrowed. "Our home," I corrected, my voice shaking. He stepped closer. "Kara, don't embarrass yourself." That was when something in me went very still. "Embarrass myself?" I asked. "You have no income? No career? No savings of your own? You don't even know how to pay the property tax without asking me where the paperwork is." His voice lowered, cruel and calm. "You will not survive alone." Brandon flinched. Melissa looked down at her hands. I waited for someone to object. No one did. Warren walked to the front closet and pulled out my small brown suitcase, the one we used for weekend trips. He rolled it across the floor until it stopped near my feet. "You can stay at a motel for a few days," he said. "After that, we'll figure out arrangements." I whispered. He ignored that. "I already packed some of your clothes." That sentence frightened me more than anything else. He had planned this. He had gone into our bedroom, opened my drawers, touched my sweaters, folded my nightgowns, and placed pieces of my life into a suitcase while I cooked dinner and washed dishes and believed I still had a marriage. I stood slowly. "Brandon," I said again, and this time my voice broke. My son finally looked up. His eyes were red. "Mom, maybe just for tonight," he said. "Maybe everyone needs to cool down. Everyone." As if I had done something equal to what was being done to me. I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because if I spoke, I might collapse. I walked upstairs to the bedroom. Warren followed, not close enough to touch me, but close enough to make sure I did not take anything he did not approve of. I opened the closet and reached for my winter coat. My fingers brushed the old cardboard box on the top shelf. My father's box. I had nearly forgotten it was there. After my father died, I kept some of his papers, old letters, military records, insurance documents, a few envelopes I never fully understood. Warren had once told me that junk is useless, and I had almost thrown it away. But something had stopped me. That night, Standing in the closet with my marriage ending behind me, I pulled the box down. Warren frowned. "What's that?" "My father's papers." "You don't need that." I hugged it against my chest. "Then it won't matter if I take it." For the first time that night, he looked uncertain. Only for a second. Then he shrugged. "Fine. Take your memories." I put the box on top of the suitcase and zipped my coat. When I came downstairs, Brandon was standing near the fireplace. Melissa was by the door. No one spoke. I paused in the entryway and looked back at the house. Warren stood with his arms crossed. "You'll understand soon enough," he said. "The real world is not kind to women who think pride can pay bills." I looked at him through tears I refused to let fall. "No," I said quietly, "but maybe the real world is kinder than you've been." His face hardened. I opened the door. Cold rain blew against my cheeks. I stepped onto the porch with one suitcase, one old box, and 32 years of silence pressing against my back. Behind me, the door closed. Not slammed, closed. That was worse, because it sounded final. I sat in my car for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel, unable to turn the key. My whole body shook. I wanted to scream. I wanted to go back inside and demand that someone remember who I was, a wife, a mother, a woman who had given her whole life to that house. But then I looked at the cardboard box on the passenger seat. My father's name was written on the side in faded black marker. For reasons I did not understand yet, I placed my hand on top of it and whispered, "Daddy, I don't know what to do." The rain kept falling. And finally, with nowhere else to go, I started the car and drove away. I did not drive away from that house like a brave woman. I drove away like someone had taken a knife and cut the ground out from under me. The rain hit the windshield so hard I could barely see the road. My hands were locked around the steering wheel. My suitcase was in the back seat, packed by the man who had just thrown me out. My father's cardboard box sat beside me like the only witness who had not betrayed me. For 15 minutes, I drove in circles. I passed the grocery store where Warren used to send me with a list and a budget. I passed the pharmacy where I picked up his blood pressure pills every month. I passed the diner where Brandon used to beg for pancakes after Little League games. Every street had a memory, and every memory now felt like evidence that I had mistaken routine for love. My phone buzzed. For one foolish second, my heart jumped. Maybe Brandon, maybe my son had finally found the courage to say, "Mom, I'm sorry. Come to my house tonight." But it was Warren. The message was short. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. Stay somewhere tonight. We'll talk when you calm down." I stared at those words until the car behind me honked. When I calmed down, he had thrown me out in the rain in front of my son with one suitcase, and somehow I was still the problem. I did not answer. Instead, I pulled into the first cheap motel I saw near the highway. The sign blinked vacancy in red letters, half of them flickering, like even the sign was tired. The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and cleaning spray. A young man behind the counter looked at my wet coat, my swollen eyes, and the cardboard box in my arms. One night he asked. I almost said, "I don't know," because I didn't. One night I said, "When my debit card approved," I nearly cried from relief. Room 114 was small, dim, and cold. The curtains did not close all the way. The heater made a knocking sound every few minutes. There was a stain on the carpet near the bathroom door. I locked the door. Then I pushed the small table in front of it. Maybe that sounds dramatic. But when your own husband removes you from your home like you are a problem to be solved, you stop trusting doors. I set the suitcase on the floor and opened it. Warren had packed like a man sending an employee on a short business trip. 2 blouses, 1 pair of black pants, 1 pair of jeans, a nightgown, underwear folded neatly, no warm sweater, no extra shoes, no family photos, no medicine for my migraines, and not one thing that made me feel like myself. At the very bottom, I found a white envelope. For a second, I thought Warren had left me money. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was not cash. It was a note. Kara, this is temporary if you act reasonably. Do not call Brandon and upset him. Do not come back to the house without speaking to me first. I will handle the bills as usual. Warren, I read it twice. Then a third time. Do not call Brandon. There it was. Not a request. Not concern. Control. Even from miles away, he was still trying to decide who I could talk to, where I could go, what version of the story people would hear. I tore the note in half. Then I tore it again. The pieces fell into the motel trash can like tiny white flags I refused to wave. My phone buzzed again. Melissa this time. Kara, I hope you understand Warren is under a lot of pressure. Please don't make Brandon choose sides. I laughed, a dry, broken laugh. They had already chosen a side. They had chosen the man with the house, the business, the loud voice, and the bank passwords. I put the phone face down on the bed. Then I looked at my father's box. It was old and soft at the corners, the kind of box people keep meaning to sort through and never do. Warren had called it junk more than once. Your father saved every scrap of paper, he used to say. No wonder his garage was a mess. But my father was not a messy man. He was careful, quiet, precise. The kind of man who kept receipts because he believed details mattered. I pulled the box onto the bed and opened it. At first, it was exactly what I expected. Old tax forms, insurance papers, a military discharge document, a photograph of my father standing beside his pickup truck, a birthday card I had sent him in 1999 still tucked inside the envelope. Then I found a folder I did not remember. It was labeled in my father's handwriting, for Kara only. My breath stopped. Not Kara and Warren. Not family documents. For Kara only. Inside was a cream-colored envelope, a stack of account statements, and a letter folded into thirds. I opened the letter first. My dear Kara Ann, if anything ever happens to me, I want you to have something that belongs only to you. I know Warren likes to take charge. Maybe he means well. Maybe he does not. But a woman should always have one door no one else has the key to. I sat completely still. The heater knocked. A car passed outside. Somewhere in the next room, someone laughed at a television show. But I could not move. My father had seen it. Years before, Warren humiliated me in that living room, years before Brandon looked at the floor. Years before I stood in a motel room with rainwater on my shoes, my father had seen something in my marriage that I had spent decades explaining away. I kept reading. I opened an investment account in your name. It began small, and it may still be small. But it is yours. If anyone tells you, it is not worth the trouble, check anyway. If anyone tells you that you cannot stand on your own, check anyway. That sentence hit me harder than Warren's cruelty. Check anyway. I reached for the statements. The first one was from years ago. The balance was around $18,000. My heart sank a little. It was not nothing, but it was not enough to rebuild a life. Not at 58. Not with no job, no house, and a husband who controlled everything. Then I noticed another page. It was newer. Not recent, but newer. The account had been transferred after a brokerage merger. The fund names were listed in columns. There were notes about reinvested dividends, stock splits, long-term growth. At the bottom was an account number. And beside it, in my father's handwriting, another note. Do not let Warren manage this. My mouth went dry. Why would my father write that? What had Warren said to him? What had my father known? I searched deeper in the folder. Beneath the statements was a photocopy of a beneficiary form. My name was typed clearly. Kara Ann Mills. Sole owner? Sole owner. I whispered those words out loud. Then I saw something that made my hands turn cold. There was a sticky note attached to the back page. Kara, if Warren ever asks about this, tell him nothing until you speak to Elaine. Elaine, my cousin in Dayton, my father's niece. The one Warren always said was too nosy. The one he never liked me calling after Dad died. The one who had once pulled me aside at the funeral and said your father wanted me to make sure you read everything. I hadn't. I had been grieving, exhausted. Warren had handled the paperwork. Warren had told me there was nothing important. Warren had lied. I picked up my phone and almost called Elaine right then, but it was past midnight. My finger hovered over her name in my old address book. Then my phone lit up again. Warren. This time he was calling. I stared at his name until it stopped ringing. A voicemail appeared. I should not have played it, but I did. Kara, stop acting like this is some tragedy. You have no idea what I've been dealing with. You wouldn't last a week without me, and we both know it. Don't start calling people and embarrassing this family. I'll speak to you tomorrow. The room went quiet after his voice ended. For years, that message would have broken me. That night, it did something else. It sharpened me. I looked down at my father's papers, at the account number, at the warning about Warren, at the words sole owner, and a thought came to me so clearly, it almost scared me. What if Warren had not thrown me out because I was useless? What if he had thrown me out because he thought I would never discover what he had kept me from seeing? I gathered every paper from the folder and placed them neatly on the motel desk. Then I took photos of each page with my phone. Account number, letter, beneficiary form, my father's warning, everything. I sent one text to Elaine. This is Kara. I found Dad's folder. I need to talk as soon as you can. For the first time all night, I was not crying. My face was still wet. My hands were still shaking. I was still in a cheap motel with no plan, no home, and no idea what would happen next. But Warren was wrong about one thing. I was not helpless. I had been uninformed, and there is a difference. I placed my father's letter under my pillow, turned off the lamp, and sat in the dark with my coat still on. Outside, the rain slowed. Inside, my phone buzzed one last time. Elaine had answered. Do not call Warren. Do not sign anything. Call me at 7 a.m. Your father was afraid this day would come. I stared at that message until my whole body went cold. Then I understood. The box was not just a memory. It was a warning. And whatever Warren had been hiding from me, I had just taken the first step toward finding it. At 6:42 the next morning, I was already sitting on the edge of the motel bed with my shoes on. I had not slept more than 20 minutes at a time. Every noise outside made me look at the door. Every time my phone lit up, my stomach tightened. Warren had left 2 more messages before dawn. I did not open them. Elaine had told me not to call him, and for once in my life, I listened to someone who was trying to protect me. At exactly 7 a.m., my phone rang. Elaine Whitaker. I answered before the first ring finished. Kara. The sound of her voice nearly broke me. Elaine was 71, sharp as a tack, and had the kind of calm that made you sit up straighter. I found Dad's folder, I said. I know. I've been waiting 12 years for you to say that. My fingers tightened around the phone. 12 years. She exhaled. Your father tried to talk to you before he passed. Warren wouldn't let him get 2 minutes alone with you. I stood up so fast the mattress squeaked. What? At the hospital? Elaine said. Your father asked Warren to step out. Warren said you were too upset for business talk. Then he told me later that he'd handled everything. My chest turned cold. He told me Dad didn't leave anything important. He lied. 2 words. Simple, clean, devastating. I looked at the folder spread across the motel desk. Elaine, what is this account? It started as a small investment, she said. Your father put money into it after your mother died. He wanted you to have something Warren couldn't touch. How much is it worth? I don't know the current number. But if it was left alone, Kara? She paused. It may be much more than Warren ever wanted you to know. I sat down slowly. Then Elaine's voice changed. Listen to me carefully. Do not sign anything Warren gives you. Do not agree to anything over the phone. Do not let him convince you this is marital property until you speak to a professional. Why would he do that? Elaine was quiet for a moment. Because he asked your father about that account once. My mouth went dry. When, about 6 months before your father died, Warren called him and said married couples shouldn't keep financial secrets. Your father told him a woman is allowed to have something of her own. After that, your father didn't trust him. I pressed my hand to my forehead. All those years I had thought my father and Warren were simply different kinds of men, quiet and loud, careful and confident. But maybe my father had seen the danger before I did. Elaine gave me the name of a financial advisor in Dayton, then told me to call the institution listed on the papers. And Kara. Yes, if Warren shows up, don't open the door. I looked around the motel room with its thin curtains and weak lock. I pushed a table in front of it. Good, she said. Keep it there. After we hung up, I sat in silence for almost a full minute. Then I called the number on the statement. It took 40 minutes, 3 transfers, and more security questions than I knew existed. My voice shook when I gave my father's name, my social security number, my old address, my current address, which I almost could not answer, because I did not have one anymore. Finally, a woman named Patricia came on the line. Mrs. Mills, I can confirm there is an account associated with your name. My heart began to pound. Is it still active? Yes, ma'am. I closed my eyes. Active. 1 word, and the room shifted. Can you tell me the balance? For security reasons, I can't disclose full details until your identity verification is complete. But I can tell you this is not a closed or inactive account. We'll need to schedule a secure appointment. How soon we have availability tomorrow morning at our Columbus office. Tomorrow. Not someday. Not maybe. Tomorrow. I wrote down the address with a pen from the motel nightstand, pressing so hard the paper nearly tore. When the call ended, I felt something I had not felt in years. Not happiness, control, small, fragile control. I checked out of the motel at 11. I could not afford to stay there night after night, not without knowing what money I had. Elaine insisted I come to Dayton, but something in me refused to run that far. I needed to stay close enough to face what was coming. So I drove to the Columbus Public Library. I don't know why I chose the library, except that it was warm, quiet, and free. Maybe that is why so many broken people end up there. No one asks why you came. No one asks what you lost. You can sit at a table with your whole life in a cardboard box, and people simply let you breathe. I found a seat near the back, beside a tall window. That was where I met Ruth Bennett. She was shelving books in the large print section, a tall black woman with silver braids pinned neatly at the back of her head and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She noticed the papers spread in front of me, then noticed my face. You look like someone who's trying not to fall apart in public, she said. I looked up, startled. She smiled gently. Don't worry, I've done it here more than once. I should have said I was fine. That was the old Kara's answer. Instead, I said, "My husband threw me out last night." Ruth did not gasp. She did not pity me. She simply pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. "Did you eat breakfast?" The question was so practical, so human, that tears filled my eyes. "No." She opened her tote bag and placed a granola bar on the table. "Start with that. Disasters are harder on an empty stomach." I laughed before I could stop myself. It came out cracked and strange, but it was still a laugh. Ruth did not ask for the whole story. She let me give it in pieces. Warren, Brandon, Melissa, the suitcase, the motel, my father's folder, the account, the appointment tomorrow. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "Your husband made one mistake, only one. He thought humiliation would make you obedient." Her eyes sharpened. Sometimes humiliation wakes a woman up. Those words stayed with me. Ruth told me she volunteered at the library 3 days a week after retiring from the county clerk's office. She knew paperwork, she knew records, she knew how people hid things in fine print. "You need copies," she said. "Not just photos, paper copies, organized." I don't even know where to start. Yes, you do. You start with what proves ownership, then identity, then anything with Warren's name near your money. My money. The phrase sounded foreign. Ruth helped me use the copier. She showed me how to make a folder for each category. Account statements, father's letter, identification, Warren's messages, Elaine's texts. When she saw Warren's note telling me not to call Brandon, her mouth tightened. "That's not a husband," she said. "That's a man managing witnesses." A chill ran through me, because she was right. By late afternoon, I had a neat stack of copies and a list of things to do. Open a separate email account, change passwords, get a post office box, ask the financial office about account access history, find out whether Warren had ever attempted to contact them. Every item on that list felt like a step away from the woman who had sat silently in Warren's living room. Then my phone rang. Brandon. My breath caught. Ruth looked at the screen, then at me. "You don't have to answer." But I did. "Mom." His voice was low. "Brandon." There was a pause. "Dad said you're making this difficult." I closed my eyes. "Of course he did. What do you think I asked?" "I don't know. Melissa says maybe you and Dad both need space. Brandon, your father threw me out in the rain." "I know, but no." My voice surprised me. It was not loud, but it was firm. There is no but after that. Silence. Then he whispered, "Where are you?" I looked at Ruth. She shook her head once. I understood. "I'm safe," I said. "Dad's worried." "No, Brandon. Your father is not worried. He's losing control." He did not answer. I softened, but only a little. "I love you, but I will not let anyone use you to pull me back into that house." "Mom, I have to go." I ended the call before he could hand the phone to Warren, before I could hear another excuse, before my old instincts dragged me backward. My hands were shaking. Ruth reached across the table and touched my wrist. That, she said, was the sound of a woman finding her voice. That night, Ruth helped me find a small, extended stay room near the library. Not fancy, not permanent, but clean, safe, and mine for the week. I paid with my own card. I wrote my own name on the form. I carried my own suitcase inside. Before I went to bed, I checked my messages. Warren had sent one more. "You're being influenced by people who don't understand our marriage." For the first time, I did not feel the urge to defend myself. I typed one sentence back. "Do not contact me unless it is in writing." Then I blocked his number from ringing through. I did not know yet how much my father's account was worth. I did not know what Warren had hidden. I did not know whether Brandon would choose truth or comfort. But I knew one thing. Warren had said I would never survive alone. By the end of my first full day without him, I had eaten made copies, protected my documents, found shelter, scheduled a financial appointment, and told my son the truth. It was not a new life yet, but it was the first proof that Warren Mills had been wrong. Warren did not panic right away. That was important to understand. Men like Warren do not fall apart the moment they lose control. First, they pretend nothing has changed. Then they get angry. Then they look for someone to blame. For the first week after I left, he acted as if I were the one being punished. He sent emails instead of calling because I had told him to keep everything in writing. Kara, you are making a temporary disagreement unnecessarily hostile. Kara, Brandon is upset because of your behavior. Kara, I hope you realize motel rooms and strangers at libraries are not a life. I saved every message. Ruth had told me, when a controlling man writes things down, let him. Paper has a better memory than people. So I let Warren write. Meanwhile, I went to the financial office. I wore the best blouse. Warren had accidentally packed the black pants and the only pair of shoes I had. Ruth drove me because she said no woman should walk into a room that important feeling alone. The office was on the 7th floor of a glass building downtown. Everything smelled like coffee-polished wood and expensive decisions. A woman named Patricia met me in a small conference room. She verified my identity. Then she turned her monitor slightly toward me. Mrs. Mills, she said, this account has been active for many years. My hands folded tightly in my lap. And the balance, she hesitated not because she was unsure, but because she seemed to understand the number would change the room. When she said it, I did not speak. I could not. It was not $18,000 anymore. It was enough to buy a modest home outright. Enough to live. Enough to breathe. Enough to make Warren's sentence, "You'll never survive alone," sound not just cruel, but foolish. Ruth reached under the table and squeezed my hand. Patricia explained that my father's original investment had grown over time. Reinvested dividends, market gains, stock splits, years of being left untouched. Then she said something that made the warmth drain from my face. There were several inquiry attempts on this account over the years. Inquiry attempts, I asked? Someone contacted previous institutions asking about access transfer options and marital authorization. Ruth leaned forward. Who? Patricia looked at the file. We can't release everything today without a formal request, but one name appears in the notes. I already knew before she said it. Warren Mills. The room went silent. My husband had known. Maybe not the exact balance. Maybe not full access. But he had known enough to ask. Enough to lie. Enough to keep me away from the folder. Patricia continued carefully. No withdrawals were made. The account was protected because it was individually owned and tied to your father's estate documents. But I strongly recommend you update all contact information, passwords, security questions, and beneficiary details immediately. I want everything changed, I said. My voice did not shake. Not that time. By the end of the appointment, the account was secured. Warren's old home address was removed. A new mailing address would go to a post office box Ruth helped me open that afternoon. I created new passwords, new security questions, new everything. For the first time in 32 years, there was money in my name that Warren could not touch. And somehow across town, Warren's perfect new life was beginning to rot. I learned that from Brandon. He called 3 days later. This time, his voice sounded different. Less defensive, more tired. Mom, he said Dad's been acting strange. I sat at the small table in my extended stay room, sorting papers into folders. Strange how he's angry all the time. He snapped at one of his crew guys in front of a client. Melissa said he came by our place yesterday, asking if I knew where you were staying. My fingers stopped moving. What did you tell him? I said I didn't know. Was that the truth? Yes, I believed him. But belief did not mean trust had been repaired. He also asked if you had talked to Elaine. Brandon added. My stomach tightened. He asked that, yeah. Why? I looked at my father's folder on the table. Because Elaine knows things he doesn't want discussed. Brandon was quiet. Then he said, Mom, is there something going on with money? I almost told him everything. But Ruth's voice echoed in my mind. Do not give information to someone still standing too close to Warren. So I said, there has been money hidden from me? That's all I can say right now. Hidden by Dad. I didn't hide it from myself, Brandon. He inhaled sharply. I heard Melissa in the background asking, what did she say? Then Brandon lowered his voice. Dad told me you're confused. There it was, the next stage. If Warren could not control me, he would question my mind. I leaned back in the chair. Your father is welcome to put that in writing. Brandon said nothing. Listen to me, I continued. I am not confused. I am not unstable. I am not being influenced by strangers. I am asking questions your father hoped I would never ask. That call ended quietly. No apology, not yet, but something had shifted. By then, Warren had moved Denise Harper into the story. I had heard her name before, though Warren never admitted anything. Denise was a real estate agent in her late 40s who wore bright lipstick and drove a white Lexus. She had referred clients to Warren's company for years. He always said she was good for business. 2 weeks after I left, Ruth showed me a photo someone had posted online. Warren and Denise at a steakhouse, her hand on his arm, his smile wide and proud. The caption read, New beginnings deserve a toast. I stared at it for a long time. Ruth watched my face. Does it hurt? Yes, I said. Good. Don't pretend it doesn't. Just don't let it steer the car. That photo did hurt, not because I wanted Warren back, but because I realized how quickly he had replaced the wife he claimed was the problem. How easily he had stepped into public happiness while I was still learning which motel rooms felt safe. But Warren's new beginning was expensive. Denise liked restaurants, weekend trips, new clothes, and attention. Warren liked showing people he was still powerful. Together, they spent money like appearances could pay overdue invoices. They could not. Within a month, Mills Home Solutions began losing clients. I knew because people talk in communities, especially when a man has spent years making himself look bigger than he is. One of Ruth's friends had a nephew who worked for a contractor who used to subcontract for Warren. The news came in pieces. A bathroom remodel left unfinished. A kitchen job delayed 3 weeks. A supplier refusing to deliver materials without payment. 2 crew members quitting after checks came late. Warren had always blamed stress on me, but I was gone now, and the stress remained. One afternoon, I received an email from him with the subject line, Enough. Kara. Whatever you think you are doing, it is hurting this family. Brandon is distracted. People are asking questions. You need to stop hiding and have a reasonable conversation with me. I stared at the screen. Then I typed back Warren. A reasonable conversation can happen through attorneys or in writing. Do not contact me about personal matters unless they concern legal or financial documentation. Kara. His reply came 7 minutes later. You think a little money from your father makes you powerful? I stopped breathing. There it was. Proof. He knew. I forwarded the email to Elaine, then to Patricia. Then I printed it and placed it in the folder labeled Warren Written Communication. Ruth read it and tapped one finger on the page. He just showed his hand. What do? You don't react. You document? That became my new rhythm. Document. Protect. Learn. Repeat. I opened my own checking account. I met with a financial counselor. I updated my mailing address. I applied for part-time work at the library because Ruth said money is one kind of independence. Routine is another. The library hired me for 20 hours a week helping with community programs and basic computer classes. It was not glamorous. It did not need to be. The first time I received a paycheck with my name on it, I sat in my car and cried. Not because the amount was large, because Warren had not given it to me. Meanwhile, Warren's messages became shorter, sharper. Where are you living? Who is advising you? Did Elaine put you up to this? Then one Friday evening, Brandon called again. This time, he sounded scared. Mom-Dad came over tonight. What happened? He and Melissa argued about what he wanted me to sign something for the business. My body went still. What kind of something I don't know? A loan extension, maybe. He said it was just paperwork. Melissa told him we needed to read it first, and he exploded. Did you sign? No. I closed my eyes in relief. Good. Don't sign anything. Mom? His voice cracked slightly. What is going on? I looked at the folders on my table. My father's warning, Warren's emails, the account inquiry notes, the growing pattern. I think your father is in trouble, I said. And I think he has been trying to use the people closest to him as exits. Brandon did not answer. For the first time, I think my son heard me. Not as the emotional mother, not as the discarded wife, as a woman who knew something. That night, I looked out the window of my small rented room at the parking lot, lights glowing against the dark. Warren had a house, a business, a new woman, a son still trying to believe in him, and yet somehow he was the one losing ground. I had one room, one job, one box of papers, and a woman named Ruth who refused to let me fall apart. But for the first time in my life, the truth was on my side. And truth, I was learning, does not need a big house to survive. It only needs one woman brave enough to stop looking away. The first woman I helped at the library was not supposed to become the beginning of anything. Her name was Mrs. Helen Porter, and she came in on a Tuesday afternoon wearing a navy coat, orthopedic shoes, and the expression of someone trying very hard not to cry in public. I was working at the front desk sorting returned books and helping people reset passwords on the public computers. It had been 3 weeks since the library hired me part-time. I still felt nervous every morning when I pinned on my name tag. Kara Mills. For years, my name had appeared under Warren's. On tax forms, church directories, holiday cards. Warren and Kara Mills. Now it was just mine. Helen approached the desk with a stack of envelopes clutched against her chest. Excuse me, she said. Do you help with computers I can try? She lowered her voice. My bank says I have to download statements. I don't know how. My son used to help me, but... She stopped. I knew that pause. It was the sound of a woman deciding how much humiliation she could survive in one sentence. I led her to a computer near the back. Ruth glanced over from the large print section, saw the envelopes, and gave me a small nod. Take your time. Helen's hands trembled as she typed. Twice she entered the wrong password. The third time the account opened. Then she froze. What is it? I asked. She pointed at the screen. That withdrawal. I didn't make that. The amount was not small. I leaned closer, careful not to touch the mouse without permission. Do you recognize the name? Her lips pressed together. My grandson. There it was again. Family. The word that was supposed to mean safety, but sometimes meant the person close enough to take what no stranger could reach. Helen began apologizing. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have bothered you. I'm sure there's an explanation. He's had a hard year. He said he only borrowed a little. I heard my own voice from years before. Warren is stressed. Warren means well. Warren handles things. I pulled a chair beside her. Mrs. Porter, you're not bothering me. And you're allowed to ask questions about your own money. She looked at me like no one had said that to her in a long time. For the next hour, we printed statements. We circled unfamiliar withdrawals. We wrote down dates. I helped her find the bank's fraud department number. Then Ruth quietly gave her the number for a local senior legal aid office. Helen kept whispering, "I feel so stupid." Finally, I said, "You are not stupid. You trusted someone who should have protected you. That is not the same thing." The words came out before I realized they were also meant for me. Helen stared at me. Then she started crying. Not loudly. Just tears slipping down her face while she held those printed statements like they were proof she had not imagined the betrayal. That afternoon, after Helen left, Ruth walked over and placed a cup of coffee beside me. "You saw yourself in her?" she said. "Yes." "And what did you tell her? That she wasn't stupid?" Ruth raised one eyebrow. "Good. Now try believing it when it's about you." I almost smiled. But the truth was, something had changed in me that day. For weeks I had been protecting myself. Copies, passwords, appointments, folders, emails. Every action had been about survival. Helping Helen was different. It made me realize my pain had given me a language other women understood. Not because I was special. Because too many of us had been trained to doubt ourselves before doubting the people hurting us. A few days later, Helen came back with a small thank you card. She had spoken to the bank. The account had been frozen. Her grandson was angry, but her money was safe. "You gave me courage," she said. I shook my head. "No, you already had it. You just needed someone to stand beside you while you used it." Ruth heard that and laughed from behind the desk. "Listen to you," she said. "Sounding like you run a support group." I looked at her. She stopped laughing. "Kara," she said slowly, "maybe you should." At first I thought she was joking. "I'm barely holding my own life together. That's exactly why women would trust you. I don't have credentials. You have experience. And you know how to organize paperwork better than half the people who charge money for it. I helped one woman. One woman is how most things begin." I tried to dismiss it, but Ruth did not let the idea die. Over the next week, she started sending women to my table. Not officially, not loudly, just quietly. "Kara can help you print that form. Kara knows how to make a folder for bank papers. Kara can show you how to set up a separate email." Soon, I was helping widows understand insurance letters, helping divorced women find old tax documents, helping a retired teacher dispute a strange credit card charge, helping a grandmother create a password her nephew could not guess. Every story was different. Every fear sounded familiar. One woman said, "My daughter says I'm too old to handle this." Another said, "My husband always did the bills. I don't even know where to start." Another whispered, "If I ask questions, he gets angry." That one stayed with me. I looked at her across the library table and saw myself sitting in Warren's kitchen, holding that overdue supplier notice while he told me I did not understand business. So I said, "Anger is sometimes used to stop a question before it finds an answer." The woman went still. Then she wrote that sentence down. By the end of my second month at the library, Ruth convinced me to host a small, free workshop. We called it Know Your Papers. Nothing dramatic, nothing threatening, just a 1-hour session in the community room about organizing personal documents, reading bank statements, protecting passwords, and knowing what not to sign without advice. I expected 5 people. 23 showed up, mostly women over 55. Some married, some widowed, some divorced. Some still wearing wedding rings they kept twisting nervously while I spoke. I stood at the front of that room with my notes in my hand, terrified. Then I saw Helen Porter in the second row. She gave me a thumbs up. So I began. "My name is Kara Mills," I said, "and a few months ago, I believed I could not survive without my husband handling everything." The room went quiet. I was wrong. A woman in the back wiped her eyes. I did not tell them all the details. Not Warren, not the motel, not the account. But I told them enough. I told them that not knowing is not the same as being incapable. I told them that asking questions is not disrespect. I told them that a signature can change a life. I told them to keep copies, make calls, verify facts, and never let shame keep them from seeking help. When the workshop ended, no one rushed out. They lined up. One by one, they asked questions. Quiet questions, frightened questions. Questions they had been holding for years. Ruth stood near the door watching me with a look I could not read. After the last woman left, she walked over and handed me a folder. "What's this?" I asked. "A list of community centers, senior groups, and church offices that might want the same workshop." I stared at her. "Ruth, what I work part-time at a library, and now you also have a service people need." "A service?" She tapped the folder. "Document organizing, financial paperwork support, senior advocacy referrals. You don't give legal advice, you don't give investment advice. You help women understand what they have and where to ask next." I shook my head. I wouldn't know how to start. Ruth smiled. "You already started." That night in my extended stay room, I opened my laptop and created a simple page. Mills Personal Paperwork Support. Then I deleted Mills. My hands hovered over the keyboard. For 32 years, that name had tied me to Warren. But it was also my name now, my choice, my work. I typed it again. Kara Mills Personal Paperwork Support, Services Document Organization, Bank Statement Review Preparation, Password and Account Setup Guidance, Senior Resource Referrals, One-on-one Paperwork Sessions. I stared at the page until my eyes blurred. Then I published it. The next morning, Helen's niece shared it on Facebook. By noon, I had 3 messages. By evening 7. One woman wrote, "My mother needs help. She's afraid to ask my brother about money." Another wrote, "I think my husband opened something in my name." The last message came from a woman named Carol. "I saw you at the library. You said asking questions is not disrespect." I haven't stopped thinking about that. I sat back from the laptop. For the first time since Warren pushed my suitcase toward the door, I felt something stronger than fear. Purpose. But purpose has a way of attracting attention. 2 days later, Warren emailed me. "So now you're pretending to be some kind of financial expert. Be careful, Kara. People might start asking what kind of wife walks out on her husband and then plays victim for sympathy." I read it once. Then I printed it. Then I placed it in the folder. But this time, I did not cry. I smiled, because Warren had finally noticed something that scared him. I was no longer disappearing quietly. Other women were beginning to hear my voice, and soon so would he. The letter from the bank arrived on a Thursday. Not by email, not through the online portal. A real letter, thick and official, delivered to the post office box Ruth had insisted I open. I stood in the small lobby with the envelope in my hand, staring at the return address. My name was printed clearly on the front. Kara Ann Mills. Not Warren and Kara. Not Mrs. Warren Mills. Just me. Ruth was beside me holding her own mail and pretending not to watch my face. "Open it," she said. "Here. Unless you want to stare at it until Christmas." I slid my finger under the flap. Inside was a formal confirmation packet from the financial institution. Updated contact information, new security settings, beneficiary forms, account protection notices. And then near the back, a printed statement with the full current balance. I had heard the number in Patricia's office, but seeing it in black ink made my knees weaken. Ruth took one look at me and grabbed my elbow. "Kara, I handed her the page. She read it once. Then she looked at me over her glasses. "Well," she said quietly, "Warren Mills is going to need a new insult." I laughed, but it came out shaky. The amount was not billionaire money. It was not some fantasy fortune. But for a woman who had been told she could not survive without her husband, it was freedom written in numbers. Enough to buy a small home. Enough to pay for legal help. Enough to never again beg Warren for grocery money, gas money, or permission. Enough to make every cruel word he had spoken sound like fear disguised as confidence. I folded the statement carefully and put it back in the envelope. Ruth lowered her voice. "What are you going to do?" I looked around the post office lobby. People were buying stamps, checking boxes, mailing birthday cards. Ordinary life moving around me while mine quietly changed. "I'm not going to tell Warren." Ruth smiled. "Good answer." That afternoon, I met with a financial advisor Patricia recommended. His name was Mark Ellis, a calm man in his 50s who wore a navy suit and did not speak to me like I was a child. That alone nearly made me trust him. Nearly. But I had learned not to hand trust over too quickly. Ruth came with me and sat beside me like a guard dog in a cardigan. Mark explained options, conservative investments, monthly withdrawals, tax implications, emergency funds. He asked what I wanted the money to do. No one had asked me that before. Warren had always told money where to go. Bills, business, repairs, his truck, his tools, his decisions. Now Mark was asking me. "I want safety," I said first. He nodded, and I looked down at my hands. "I want a home." The word came out softer than I expected. Not a mansion, not a showplace, not a house where someone else's anger controlled the temperature in every room. A home. Mine. Mark did not smile like it was silly. He simply wrote it down. Then we build the plan around that. Build the plan. Not ask Warren. Not wait for permission. Build. Over the next 2 weeks, my life became a strange mix of fear and motion. I worked at the library in the mornings, helped women with paperwork in the afternoons, and spent evenings looking at small houses online. Ruth had opinions about every listing. "No," she said, pointing at one photo. "That basement looks like it eats people." Another one, "Too close to the highway." Another, "That kitchen has seen crimes." For the first time in months, I laughed until my stomach hurt. Then I found it. A small brick ranch house on a quiet street in Grove City just outside Columbus. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a white front door, a little patch of garden in the back. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. But when I saw the photo of the kitchen window over the sink, something in me stopped. There was light. Not harsh light. Not motel light. Morning light. I called the realtor before I could talk myself out of it. Her name was Dana Mitchell, and she sounded brisk, kind, and busy. We saw the house the next day. The moment I stepped inside, I knew. The floors creaked. The cabinets needed paint. The bathroom tile was old. The backyard fence leaned slightly to one side. But the house was quiet. Not empty. Quiet. There is a difference. I stood in the living room while Dana talked about square footage and inspection timelines. Ruth wandered into the kitchen, opened a cabinet, and shouted, "You could fit all your stubbornness in here and still have room for soup bowls." I smiled. Then I walked to the back bedroom. It faced the yard. There was enough space for a desk, a bookshelf, and a small table where I could help clients sort documents. Kara Mills' personal paperwork support could have an office. My office. I placed my hand against the wall. For 32 years, I had lived in a house where every room carried Warren's mood. This room carried nothing yet. That made it beautiful. "I want to make an offer," I said. Dana blinked. "Today?" "Yes." Ruth appeared in the doorway. "That's my girl. The process moved faster than I expected because I was not relying on Warren, his credit, his income, or his approval. Mark helped arrange the funds properly. Dana handled the offer. The inspection found small problems, not disasters. The seller accepted. I signed documents with my own hand. Every signature felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself Warren had tried to erase. But secrets have a way of leaking through small cracks. 3 days after the offer was accepted, Brandon called. "Mom," he said carefully, "are you buying a house?" I went still. "Who told you that?" A pause. Dad heard something. Of course he did. Warren always had a way of hearing what made him angry. What exactly did he hear? That you're looking at property. He said you must be using marital money? I almost laughed. There it was. The man who threw me out with one suitcase now wanted to claim the ground under my feet. "Brandon, I said your father does not own every dollar that exists near me. He says, if you have money, you hid it from him. No. My father protected it from him." Silence. Then Brandon whispered, "What does that mean?" "It means there are things your grandfather understood before I did." I heard Melissa in the background quieter this time. "Ask her if she has a lawyer." I closed my eyes. Not because I was angry, because Melissa was finally asking the right kind of question. "I'm getting one," I said. And Brandon, "Yeah. Do not repeat my details to your father. He's my dad, and I'm your mother." That landed. I could hear him breathing. "I don't want to be in the middle," he said. "You already are. The only choice is whether you stand in the middle with your eyes open or closed." He did not answer. After we hung up, I sat at my small rented table and stared at the wall. That was when Warren emailed. Subject, House Kara. "I don't know what game you are playing, but you are still my wife. You do not make major financial decisions without discussing them with me. If you are using funds connected to this marriage, I will find out. Warren." I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Mark, then to Elaine, then to Ruth. Ruth called immediately. "Do not answer." I wasn't going to. Good. Because that email is not about money. It's about him realizing the cage door is open. I looked at the printed bank letter on my desk. The cage door is open. That night, I did not sleep much. Not because I doubted myself. Because I understood Warren would not let go quietly. Men like him did not mourn control. They chased it. The next morning, I made an appointment with attorney Linda Brooks. Her office could see me the following week. Until then, I kept moving. The house closed quietly on a gray Monday morning. No family gathered, no champagne, no smiling husband holding the keys. Just me, Dana, a title officer, and Ruth sitting behind me with tissues in her purse she pretended were for allergies. When the final paper was signed, Dana slid the keys across the table. "Congratulations, Kara. It's yours." I picked them up, small silver keys. Nothing dramatic. But my hand shook as if they weighed more than Warren's entire house. Because those keys did not just open a front door. They closed one behind me. That evening, Ruth and I stood inside my new living room with takeout coffee and 2 folding chairs. The house smelled faintly of dust and lemon cleaner. The walls were bare. The refrigerator was empty. My suitcase sat near the hallway. Ruth raised her paper cup. To surviving alone. I looked around the little room. Then I shook my head. "No," I said. "To living free." We tapped cups. For one peaceful hour, I believed Warren might stay away. Then my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I should have ignored it, but something made me answer. At first, there was only breathing. Then Warren's voice came through low and furious. "You bought a house?" I stood in the middle of my empty living room, key still in my hand. How did you get this number? He ignored me. You think this makes you independent? I looked at Ruth. Her face hardened. I took a slow breath. No, Warren, I said. It proves I already was. For once, he had no quick answer, and in that silence, I heard something I had never heard from him before. Fear. 6 months after Warren pushed my suitcase toward the front door, my phone rang at 12:18 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was awake sitting at the small desk in my new back bedroom sorting folders for a client named Carol. Outside my window, the neighborhood was quiet. My little brick house was still half empty, but it was mine. A lamp glowed beside me. A mug of tea had gone cold near my elbow. The phone buzzed across the desk. Unknown number. I stared at it. By then, I had learned that unknown numbers were rarely innocent. I let it ring. It stopped. Then it rang again. Same number. I picked it up, but said nothing. For 3 seconds, there was only breathing. Then a voice said, Kara Warren. Not the confident Warren. Not the sharp, polished, controlling Warren who used silence like a weapon. This Warren sounded cracked. I stood slowly. How did you get this number? Kara, please don't hang up. Answer the question. I got it from Brandon. My chest tightened. Of course. Even after everything, Warren still knew which door to knock on when mine stayed locked. What do you want? There was a pause. Then he said something I had never heard from him in 32 years of marriage. I need help. The words sat between us like something ugly dragged into the light. I looked around my office. The shelves Ruth helped me assemble. The filing cabinet I bought secondhand. The framed copy of my father's letter on the wall, the line underlined in blue ink. A woman should always have one door no one else has the key to. What kind of help, I asked. He exhaled hard. Everything is falling apart. I did not speak. Warren hated silence when he was not the one controlling it. Denise is gone, he said. That did not surprise me. She cleared out last week. Took jewelry cash, some business checks. I don't know what she told people, but clients are calling. Suppliers are threatening legal action. The bank is pushing foreclosure on the business property. His voice shook on the last word. Foreclosure. 6 months earlier, he had stood in our living room and told me I did not understand money. Now money had found him. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. No, Kara, you don't understand. This is serious. I believe you. I could lose everything. I closed my eyes. There it was. Everything. Not the marriage, not his son, not the woman he threw out in the rain, the business, the property, the image, everything that made Warren feel like Warren. What do you expect me to do? I asked. I just need you to meet me. No. Kara. No, Warren. I'm not asking you to come back. That is the first honest thing you've said. He went quiet. Then his voice softened the way it used to when he wanted me to stop resisting. I know I hurt you. I almost laughed. Hurt was what happened when someone forgot your birthday. What Warren did had another name. You humiliated me, I said. You threw me out of my home in front of my son. You told me I would never survive alone. I was angry. You were prepared. You packed my suitcase. Silence. That silence told me he remembered every detail. Finally, he said I made mistakes. Then write them down and send them to my attorney. No lawyers. His voice sharpened instantly. There he was, the real Warren still underneath the panic. This doesn't need to become some legal circus. It became legal the moment you started threatening my money. I never threatened your money. You emailed me, Warren. He cursed under his breath. Then he tried again. I'm asking for one meeting, public place, anywhere you want. I just need to explain. I should have hung up. Ruth would have told me to hang up. Linda Brooks, my attorney, would have told me to hang up, document the call, and never meet without counsel. But there was something in Warren's voice that made me listen, not pity, not love, not hope. Fear. And fear often carries information. Why now, I asked. Why are you calling at midnight after 6 months? His breathing changed. Kara, the bank gave me 48 hours. For what? To produce documents. What documents? He did not answer. My hand tightened around the phone. What documents, Warren? I can explain better in person. There it was. The hook hidden inside the plea. He did not just need money, he needed paper. And men like Warren only became desperate over documents when a signature alone or a lie was about to surface. I'll meet you tomorrow, I said. He exhaled like a man pulled from water. Thank God. At Miller's Diner on West Broad, noon, public table. You bring whatever documents you claim I need to see. I bring Ruth. No, just you. Then no meeting. Kara, this is private. Nothing about my safety is private anymore. He went quiet again. Then tightly. Fine. And Warren. What if you raise your voice, blame me, insult me, or ask me to sign anything before I read it with my attorney? I leave. You've changed. No, I said. I stopped shrinking. I ended the call before he could answer. For a moment, I stood in the dark office listening to my own heartbeat. Then I called Ruth. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice rough with sleep. Someone better be dead or rich. It's Warren. She was fully awake at once. What happened? He called. Denise left. The business is collapsing. The bank wants documents in 48 hours. Ruth was silent for half a second. Documents? Yes. Not money. First, no. Then he's scared of what those documents show. That's what I thought. You are not meeting him alone. I told him you're coming. Good. I'll wear my church shoes. They make me look judgmental. Despite everything, I smiled. After we hung up, I wrote down every detail of the call. Time, number, words, Denise, foreclosure, 48 hours, documents, meeting location. Then I emailed the notes to Linda Brooks. Her reply came at 6:03 a.m. Do not sign anything. Do not accept responsibility for any debt. Photograph documents if possible. Leave immediately if pressured. At 11:47, Ruth and I pulled into Miller's Diner. It was the kind of place Warren used to dismiss as where people go when they've given up. Red vinyl booths, chrome stools, waitresses who called everyone honey. Coffee strong enough to make your regrets sit up straight. Warren was already there. I saw him through the window before he saw me. For 1 second, I almost did not recognize him. His hair was uncombed. His shirt collar was wrinkled. There were deep shadows under his eyes. The man who once sat in his recliner like a king now looked like someone waiting for a verdict. Ruth looked at him, then at me. Remember, she said, you are not here to rescue him. You are here to listen for the lie. We walked in. Warren stood too quickly when he saw me. Kara. His eyes moved to Ruth. I thought this was between husband and wife. Ruth smiled. Then you should have behaved like a husband. Warren's jaw tightened. I sat across from him. Ruth sat beside me. A waitress came by. I ordered coffee. Warren ordered nothing. His hands were wrapped around a manila envelope. I looked at it. Is that what the bank wants? He pulled it closer to him. Before we get into that, I need you to understand something. No, I said. You called me at midnight. You said you needed help. Start with the envelope. His face flushed. Ruth leaned back, watching him like a judge. Warren opened the envelope and slid out several papers. Loan documents, business credit lines, a notice of default, and then one page that made the room tilt. My name was on it, Kara Ann Mills, listed as co-guarantor. My signature appeared at the bottom, but I had never signed it. For a moment, the diner noise disappeared. No clinking plates, no coffee cups, no voices, just that signature. My name, written by someone else's hand. I looked up at Warren. He would not meet my eyes. What I said slowly is this? He swallowed. It was during a difficult period. That is not an answer. The business needed backing. That is still not an answer. His voice dropped. I thought I could fix it before you ever had to know. Ruth whispered, Lord have mercy. I touched the paper with one finger. You forged my name. Warren's head snapped up. Don't use that word. What word would you prefer I did what I had to do? No, I said. You did what you thought you could get away with. His face changed then. The panic cracked and anger pushed through. You lived in that house. You benefited from that business. Don't sit there acting innocent. I stood. Ruth stood with me. Warren grabbed the papers. Kara, wait. No? You wanted help. Here it is. Get a lawyer. His voice broke. If you don't help me, I could lose the company. I looked at him across that diner table. 6 months earlier, he had told me I would never survive alone. Now he was staring at me like I was the last door left unlocked. And the strangest part was he was right. I could help him, but not the way he wanted. Warren followed us out of the diner. Kara, wait. I kept walking. Ruth was beside me, her purse tucked under her arm, her face set like stone. The noon sun was too bright after the dim diner, and for a second I felt dizzy, not weak, not confused, just furious in a way my body did not know how to hold yet. Behind us, Warren's shoes scraped against the pavement. Kara, you can't just walk away from this. I stopped so suddenly he nearly bumped into me. Then I turned. Watch me. His face tightened. That document affects both of us? No, Warren? That document affects me because you put my name on it without my consent. I was protecting the business. You were protecting yourself. He looked around the parking lot, embarrassed that 2 people near a pickup truck had turned to watch. That was Warren. He could humiliate me in a living room, but he could not stand strangers seeing him lose control. He lowered his voice. Get in my truck. We can talk privately. Ruth stepped forward. She's not getting in anything with you. Warren glared at her. This is none of your business. Ruth smiled coldly. Men always say that when witnesses become inconvenient. I almost laughed, but my throat was too tight. Warren looked back at me, and for a moment his expression shifted. Not soft. Calculating. Kara. He said, think about Brandon. That name still had power over me. He knew it. If this gets ugly, Brandon gets dragged into it. Warren continued. Is that what you want? You want our son questioned? You want Melissa ashamed? You want the whole family knowing our private business? There it was again. Family as a leash. I stepped closer to him. You should have thought about Brandon before you forged my signature. His eyes flashed. I told you not to use that word. And I told you to get a lawyer. I turned to leave. This time, he said the thing that made me stop. If I go down, Kara, I won't go down alone. Ruth's hand touched my elbow. A warning. I looked back slowly. Is that a threat? Warren's mouth opened, then closed. He realized too late what he had said. No, he muttered. It's reality. No, I said. It's another thing I'm going to write down. His face changed. For the first time, Warren understood that his words no longer disappeared after he spoke them. They became evidence. Ruth drove us straight to attorney Linda Brooks's office. I had met Linda only twice before, but both times she had made me feel steadier. She was in her early 60s with sharp gray eyes, short dark hair, and a voice that never rushed. Her office was modest, not flashy. No glass walls, no dramatic skyline. Just shelves of legal books, framed certificates, and a desk so organized it made me trust her immediately. When we walked in without an appointment, her assistant looked concerned. "Mrs. Mills, I need to see Linda," I said. Warren brought documents. Within 10 minutes, I was sitting across from Linda with Ruth beside me, and the photos I had taken of Warren's papers open on my phone. Linda did not interrupt while I explained. The midnight call, the diner, the loan documents, the co-guarantor page, the signature that was not mine, the threat in the parking lot. When I finished, Linda held out her hand. "May I see the photo again?" I gave her my phone. She zoomed in on the signature. Her expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened. "You are certain you did not sign this?" "I am absolutely certain." "Did you ever authorize Warren to sign on your behalf?" "No." "Did you know this loan existed?" "No." "Did you benefit directly from the loan proceeds?" I paused. I lived in the house. The business paid some household expenses. But I didn't know about this loan. That distinction matters. Ruth leaned forward. "Can he make her responsible for it?" Linda looked at me, not Ruth. "He can try. That does not mean he will succeed." My stomach twisted. "What do I do?" "First, you do not communicate with Warren except through counsel. Second, we send a preservation letter demanding copies of the original loan documents, application materials, notarization records, and communication history. Third, we notify the lender that you dispute the signature and did not authorize the guarantee. Will they believe me? They may not at first. Lenders protect themselves. That is why we document everything. Document everything. The phrase had become the spine holding me upright. Linda tapped the desk lightly. "There is another issue. I already knew I would not like it. What if Warren forged your signature once we need to find out whether he did it elsewhere?" The room went cold. I thought of the years he had handled taxes, insurance, credit cards, business renewals, home equity paperwork. I thought of every time he had said, "Just sign here while I was cooking, cleaning, rushing, trusting." "How do we find out?" I asked. "We pull your credit reports. We review joint accounts. We request business filings where your name appears. And we check whether you were listed on any other debts." My hands went numb. Ruth reached for them under the desk. Linda's voice softened, but only slightly. "Kara, this may feel overwhelming, but you are in a stronger position because you came forward before signing anything else." I nodded. Then I asked the question I had been afraid to ask. "Could Warren go to jail?" Linda leaned back. "If the signature was forged and used to obtain credit, it could become a criminal matter. But right now, our focus is protecting you. Protecting me. Not protecting Warren. Not protecting the family image. Me." I left Linda's office with a list of tasks and a new kind of fear. Not the fear of being alone, the fear of discovering how long I had been used. That evening, Ruth came back to my house with takeout soup and a stack of folders. "You need a bigger filing cabinet," she said. "I need a different life." "You're building one." We sat at my small kitchen table, the one I had bought at a thrift store for $40. It wobbled if you leaned too hard on the left side, but I loved it because Warren had never sat there. My laptop was open. Linda had sent instructions for pulling my credit reports. Ruth walked me through each step. One account, then another, then another. Most were familiar. A credit card I used for groceries, the old mortgage, a store card from years ago. Then I saw it, a business line of credit, opened 3 years earlier, linked to Mills Home Solutions, status delinquent. My name appeared as authorized guarantor. I stared at the screen. No, I whispered. Ruth leaned in, her face hardened. Print it. I did. Then another. A vendor financing agreement. Then an equipment lease. Then a credit inquiry from a bank I had never visited. Each page felt like a hand reaching out of my past, grabbing my throat. Warren had not made one desperate mistake. He had built a pattern. My phone buzzed. Brandon, I almost ignored it. Then I remembered Warren's threat. If I go down, I won't go down alone. I answered. Mom. His voice sounded strained. What happened? I asked. Dad just left our house. My stomach dropped. What did he want? He was furious. He said you're trying to destroy him. Did he ask you to sign anything? A pause? Mom. Brandon. Did he brought papers. Ruth closed her eyes. What kind of papers? He said they were to help restructure the company. He said if I didn't sign, employees would lose jobs. He said you were being vindictive. Did you sign? No. I gripped the phone. Thank God. But Melissa read one page. Mom, my name was already on something. The room seemed to tilt. What? I don't know what it was. Some old business document. Dad said I agreed years ago, but I don't remember signing it. I looked at Ruth. Her face said what I already knew. Warren had not only used me, he may have used our son too. Brandon, I said slowly, listen to me. Do not sign anything. Do not let him take papers back if you have them. Take photos, send them to me. Then call a lawyer. A lawyer, Mom? He's my dad, and he is acting like a man who needs other people to carry his debts. Brandon's breathing became uneven. I thought you were just angry at him. I was angry, I said. Now I'm informed. There was silence. Then he whispered, I'm scared. For the first time in months, my heart broke for him without letting that heartbreak weaken me. I know, I said, but fear is not a reason to sign your life away. After we hung up, I sat very still. Ruth did not speak. The house was quiet around us. My house. My little safe house with its old cabinets and soft evening light. But the war Warren had started was no longer outside my door. It had reached Brandon. That changed everything. I forwarded the new credit report pages to Linda. Then I sent her one more message. Warren may have used Brandon's name too. Her reply came quickly. Bring Brandon in if he is willing. Do not delay. I stared at those words. Then I looked at my father's letter framed on the wall. A woman should always have one door no one else has the key to. Warren had spent years locking doors around me. Now I was about to open every one of them. And this time, I would not be opening them alone. Brandon came to Linda Brooks's office 2 days later. He did not bring Melissa. That told me more than he meant it to. He walked in wearing the same navy jacket he wore to work, but he looked younger than 31. Pale, tired, like the little boy who used to stand in my bedroom doorway after Warren yelled too loudly downstairs. When he saw me in the waiting room, he stopped. Mom? Brandon. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he stepped forward and hugged me. Not a quick, polite hug. Not the stiff kind grown sons give mothers when they are embarrassed by emotion. He held on like something inside him had finally cracked. I'm sorry, he whispered. My eyes burned. I wanted to say, it's all right. That was the old instinct. Smooth it over. Make the child feel better. Swallow the wound. But it was not all right. So I said, I know. He pulled back, ashamed. Linda opened her office door before the silence could swallow us. "Come in." Inside, Brandon placed a folder on the desk. His hands shook as he opened it. "These are the papers Dad brought to my house." Linda put on her glasses. I sat beside Ruth. Brandon sat alone in the chair across from Linda, and that hurt to see. But maybe he needed to sit there. Not as my little boy. Not as Warren's son. As a man responsible for knowing what his name was attached to. Linda read quietly for several minutes. No one spoke. Then she looked up. "Brandon, did you sign this document?" He leaned forward. "I don't think so. That is not enough. Look carefully." She turned the page toward him. His name was printed at the top. Brandon James Mills. At the bottom was a signature. He stared at it. His face changed. "That's not mine." Linda's voice remained calm. "You're certain my B doesn't look like that? And I never write my middle initial like this." I closed my eyes. Warren had done it again. Brandon's voice rose. "Why would he put my name on a business credit extension?" Linda did not answer immediately. Then she said, "Because lenders like guarantees, especially when a business is already showing risk." Brandon pushed back from the desk. No, he wouldn't." Then he stopped. "Because the papers were in front of him. Because denial looks different when ink is staring back." Linda folded her hands. "Your father may have exposed both of you to financial liability. We need to verify originals dates, notarization, and submission records. Brandon, you need independent legal counsel." He looked at me. "Can't Linda help both of us?" Linda answered before I could. "I can advise your mother. But if your interests differ, you need your own attorney. Especially if your father claims either of you authorized him." Brandon's face went white. "He'd blame me." Ruth spoke softly. "A drowning man grabs whatever is closest." Brandon looked down. For the first time, I saw him not as the son who failed to defend me, but as another person Warren had trained to stay quiet. That did not erase the hurt, but it changed its shape. Linda gave Brandon referrals. She made copies. She told him not to speak to Warren about documents, not to sign anything, not to meet him alone, and not to let guilt become a pen in his hand. That line stayed with me. Do not let guilt become a pen. When the meeting ended, Brandon and I walked out together. Ruth stayed behind to ask Linda a question, though I suspected she was giving us privacy. In the hallway, Brandon leaned against the wall. "I didn't know, Mom. I believe you." His eyes filled. But I knew something was wrong. That was the truth we both had to face. He wiped his face quickly, angry at himself for crying. "That night, when Dad made you leave?" I should have stopped him. "Yes," I said. He flinched. I hated hurting him, but I would not lie to protect him from the truth anymore. "You should have," I continued. "You were my son. You were a grown man, and I needed one person in that room to say what was happening was wrong." He nodded, tears spilling now. "I was scared of him. I know. I hate that I was scared of my own father. So was I." He looked at me then. Really looked. Maybe for the first time, Brandon understood that I had not been weak all those years. I had been surviving the same man he feared. "I'm sorry," he said again. This time, I touched his arm. "Then don't just be sorry. Be honest?" He nodded. "With yourself. With Melissa. With your lawyer. With me. I will." I wanted to believe him. I wanted it so badly, it frightened me. Because love can make a mother hand someone the same knife twice and call it hope. So I said, "We rebuild slowly." He swallowed. "Okay." That evening, I went home exhausted. My little house was quiet when I stepped inside. No Warren in the recliner. No television blaring. No footsteps meant to intimidate me. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the stack of folders waiting on my kitchen table. I made tea and sat down. Then I opened the email from Linda. She had already sent formal notices to the lender disputing my signature. She had requested copies of the original document's identity verification records and communications involving Warren Mills. She had also advised that if Warren attempted to pressure me again, we could seek a protective communication order. Protective. Another word I was learning late in life. At 8:11 p.m., Warren emailed. Subject: you crossed a line. Kara, bringing Brandon into this was cruel. Whatever issues you and I have, turning my son against me is unforgivable. You are letting outsiders poison you. I built that business for this family. If mistakes were made, they were made under pressure, not malice. You need to stop before there is nothing left to save. Warren. I read it once. Then I read the sentence again. If mistakes were made, not if I made mistakes. Not if I hurt you. Passive words, coward words. I forwarded it to Linda. Then, for the first time, I replied with only one sentence. Warren, all future communication goes through my attorney. He answered in less than a minute. You'll regret this. I stared at those 3 words, then I printed them. The next morning, Linda called. Kara, the lender, responded faster than expected. My stomach tightened. Is that good? It is interesting. What does that mean? They located the file. The guarantee with your signature was submitted electronically, but the identity verification appears to have been completed from an email address connected to Warren's business. I sat down. Not my email. No. So how did they accept it? That is one of the questions we will be asking. I heard papers moving on her end. There is more. The lender's internal notes show that Warren represented himself as having authorization to manage financial matters for both spouses. My hand tightened around the phone. He told them he could speak for me. Yes, of course he did. Warren had spent 32 years speaking over me at dinner tables, in banks with contractors with family. Why would fraud feel different to a man who already believed my voice belonged to him? Linda continued. We are requesting the IP logs and document history. If those records show what I suspect, your position becomes stronger, and Brandon. His attorney will need to make similar requests. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the morning light on the table. 6 months earlier, I would not have understood half of what Linda said. Electronic verification, IP logs, liability dispute, preservation letters. Now, I wrote each term down, not because I was suddenly fearless, because I had learned that knowledge is what fear becomes when you refuse to look away. Later that afternoon, Ruth came by with a label maker. You bought a label maker, I asked. For your war room. My what? She pointed at the folders covering my table. Kara, this is no longer a kitchen. This is headquarters. I laughed, but she was not entirely joking. We labeled everything: Warren emails, loan dispute, Brandon documents, father's account, attorney notes, house papers. By the time we finished, the table looked less like chaos and more like strategy. Then Ruth grew quiet. What I asked. She hesitated. You know he's going to get worse before this is over. I know. Men like Warren don't confess because the truth is right. They confess when the lie gets too expensive. I looked at the folder with his name on it. Then we make the lie expensive. Ruth smiled slowly. There she is. That night, I did something I had been avoiding. I opened the old photo album I had taken from storage after buying the house. There were pictures of Warren holding Brandon as a baby. Warren standing beside me at Christmas. Warren smiling at my father's backyard barbecue. For years, I had used those pictures as proof that the good times were the real Warren, and the cruelty was the exception. Now I wondered if the good times were simply the parts that cost him nothing. I closed the album. Then I placed it on the bottom shelf, not thrown away, not displayed. That felt right. Some memories do not deserve the mantle. The next day, Linda called again. This time, her voice was different. Kara, we received a partial document history. I gripped the phone, and the loan guarantee was accessed and submitted from an office computer at Mills Home Solutions. I closed my eyes, and the email, Warren's business administrator email. I did not speak. Linda let the silence sit for a moment. Then she said, "Kara, this is no longer just suspicion." My whole body went still. For the first time, we have a trail. A trail. Not a feeling. Not a wife's complaint. Not an emotional accusation. A trail. And it led straight to Warren. Brandon came to my door on a Sunday afternoon. Not Linda's office. Not the library. My door. I saw him through the small front window before he knocked. He stood on my porch with both hands in his jacket pockets, staring down at the welcome mat like he was afraid it might reject him. For a moment, I did not move. A mother's heart is a dangerous thing. It can remember every wound and still run toward the person who caused it. Mine wanted to open the door before he even lifted his hand. But I waited. He knocked once. Softly. I opened the door and kept one hand on the knob. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Brandon." His eyes moved past me into the house. Not nosy, just surprised. Maybe he had imagined me in some sad little room still crying over Warren. Instead, he saw yellow curtains, a clean living room, Ruth's donated bookshelf, and a framed print above the couch that said, "Begin again." "You have a nice place?" he said. "Thank you." He swallowed. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, like the house belonged to someone he did not know yet. In a way, it did. This house belonged to the version of me he had never met, the one who paid her own bills, locked her own doors, and did not ask Warren what she was allowed to feel. I made coffee because I needed something to do with my hands. Brandon sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Ruth and I had labeled folders. The same table where I had learned the difference between panic and preparation. He noticed the filing cabinet in the corner. "Is all that about Dad? Some of it?" His face tightened. I placed a mug in front of him. "Did you talk to your attorney?" He nodded. "Melissa and I met with one Friday, and he thinks Dad may have used my information on at least 2 business documents." I sat across from him. Hearing it still hurt. Not because I was surprised. Because every new truth made the old family feel more like a stage set. Brandon wrapped both hands around the mug. "I keep thinking about all the times Dad said he was building something for me." His voice cracked. He used to say Mills Home Solutions would be mine one day. I thought he was hard on me because he wanted me ready. But now... He shook his head. Now I wonder if he just wanted my name available. I did not rush to comfort him. That was hard. But some pain has to finish speaking before healing can enter the room. Brandon looked up. "Mom, did you know he was this bad?" I thought carefully. "No," I said. But I knew something was wrong. I just kept giving it softer names. Like what? Stress, pride, temper, old-fashioned. Brandon looked down. "I did that too." "Yes." He flinched again, but this time he did not look away. "I told myself he was just under pressure," he said. "That if I challenged him, he'd get worse. So I stayed quiet." I took a breath. "Brandon, I understand being afraid of him. I do. But the night he threw me out, your silence hurt me almost as much as his words." Tears filled his eyes. "I know. No, I need you to hear me. I was standing there with a suitcase at my feet, and I looked at you because I thought if no one else sees me, my son will. He covered his mouth with one hand. But you looked at the floor. I was ashamed. I was abandoned. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. Brandon bent forward, crying silently. I sat with my own tears, but I did not take the words back. After a while, he whispered, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I believe you. I should have gone after you. Yes, I should have called. Yes, I should have told Melissa that what Dad did was wrong. Yes." He nodded through tears. I will spend the rest of my life regretting that night. I reached across the table then and touched his hand. Regret is only useful if it teaches you how to stand up next time. He looked at me. There will be a next time with Warren, yes. That sobered him. I told Brandon about the document trail Linda had found, the business computer, Warren's administrator email, the disputed guarantee, the possibility of more forged or unauthorized documents. Brandon listened without interrupting. Then he said, "Melissa wants to apologize." I leaned back. That name still carried a sting. For what exactly? For believing Dad? For saying you were making things difficult? For telling me not to get involved? And does she understand that staying neutral helped him? He nodded slowly. She's starting to. Starting to is not the same as understanding. I know. The old Kara would have said, "Bring her over, sweetheart. It's fine." The new Kara said, "When Melissa is ready to apologize without explaining herself first, I'll listen." Brandon looked surprised. Then he nodded. That's fair. A small silence settled between us. Not comfortable, but honest. Then Brandon pulled an envelope from inside his jacket. I brought copies. He placed them on the table. My attorney told me to keep originals, but these are copies of the papers Dad brought, and screenshots of texts he sent me. I opened the envelope. The first text made my stomach tighten. Your mother is being manipulated. Don't let her ruin what I built. The second, if you love this family, you'll sign before the bank closes the file. The third, your mother has money now. She could fix this, but she wants to punish me. I looked up. Brandon's jaw was tight. He made it sound like saving him was my responsibility. That is what he does, I said. He creates the damage, then hands someone else the bill. Brandon gave a bitter laugh. That should be written on his business card. For the first time, we both smiled. It was small, but it was real. Then his phone rang. The screen lit up on the table. Dad. Brandon froze. I looked at him. You don't have to answer. He stared at the phone like it was a test. Then he picked it up, pressed decline, and turned it face down. My throat tightened. It was not a grand speech. It was not a dramatic confrontation. But sometimes courage is just not answering the person who trained you to jump. A minute later, a text came through. Answer me. Then another. I know you're with her. Then another. Do not let your mother poison you against me. Brandon's face went pale. He knows I'm here. I stood and checked the front window. No truck, no Warren. Still, my skin prickled. Did you tell him you were coming? No. Did Melissa? I don't think so. We looked at each other. Then Brandon whispered, he may have followed me. The air in the kitchen changed. I locked the front door, then the back. Brandon stood, anger replacing fear. If he comes here, you will not fight him on my porch, I said. Mom, no. We document. We call Linda. If he trespasses, we call police. The words felt strange in my mouth. Police. About Warren. About my husband. But he had made this world, not me. I called Linda's emergency line and left a message. Then I called Ruth. She answered immediately. "What happened? Brandon is here. Warren may know. I'm on my way." "Ruth," I said, "I'm on my way." 20 minutes later, Ruth arrived with her church purse and the expression of a woman prepared to rebuke the devil personally. No Warren appeared, but his texts kept coming to Brandon. "You owe me. After everything I did for you." She walked out on us, not the other way around. That last one made Brandon stand up so fast the chair scraped the floor. "She walked out," he said, staring at the screen. "He threw you out." "Yes." "He knows he threw you out." "Yes." Brandon's hands shook. For the first time, I watched my son become angry, not because Warren was losing, but because Warren had lied. That mattered. Ruth looked at Brandon. "Now you understand. A lie repeated loudly can become a family history if nobody challenges it." Brandon nodded. Then he did something I did not expect. He typed back. "Dad, stop lying. I was there. You made Mom leave. Do not contact me about signing anything again. Speak to my attorney." He hit send before fear could change his mind. The room went silent. Then his phone rang again. He declined it. Again. He declined it. Then Warren sent one final message. "You'll regret choosing her." Brandon stared at it. Then he looked at me. "I'm not choosing sides," he said. "I'm choosing the truth." I felt something inside me loosen. Not forgiveness yet. Not full healing. But the first thread of it. That evening, Brandon stayed for dinner. Nothing fancy. Tomato soup, grilled cheese, and sliced apples, because that was what I had. Ruth stayed too, claiming she needed to supervise the emotional weather. For the first time in my new house, my son sat at my table. Not Warren's table. Mine. Before he left, Brandon stood in the doorway and looked back at me. "Mom." "Yes, I know I don't deserve it yet, but can I come again?" My heart hurt, but this time it hurt in a living way. "Yes," I said. "But we rebuild with truth, not pretending." He nodded. "No more pretending." After he drove away, Ruth and I stood by the window until his taillights disappeared. "You did well," she said. I wanted to hug him and tell him everything was forgiven. I know. Why didn't I? Because love without boundaries is how women like us end up back in cages. I looked around my little house, my locked doors, my folders, my father's letter, my own table, and for the first time I understood that healing did not always feel soft. Sometimes it felt like telling your own child the truth and trusting love to survive it. The legal mediation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Linda told me not to call it a showdown. "This is a formal meeting," she said. "Not a battlefield." But when I walked into that conference room and saw Warren sitting at the far end of the table, it felt exactly like a battlefield. He wore a gray suit I had bought him years ago for Brandon's wedding. His hair was combed. His jaw was shaved. He had clearly tried to look like the respectable businessman everyone in Columbus used to trust. But his eyes gave him away. They were tired, angry, cornered. Beside him sat his attorney, a thin man named Mr. Keller, who kept arranging his pen and legal pad as if neat stationery could make Warren innocent. Linda sat beside me. Ruth was not allowed in the room, but she was in the waiting area with a thermos of coffee and what she called righteous backup energy. Brandon came with his own attorney and sat on the opposite side of the table. That alone changed the air. Warren looked at him once. Brandon did not look away. For the first time in my life, I saw Warren realize his son was no longer standing behind him. The mediator. A calm woman named Ms. Alvarez began by explaining the purpose of the meeting. "We were there to address disputed financial documents alleged unauthorized signatures, lender claims, and possible settlement terms. Warren leaned back, trying to look offended. I want it noted, he said, that I never intended harm to anyone in my family. Linda did not blink. Intent does not erase unauthorized signatures. Mr. Keller raised a hand. We are not admitting unauthorized signatures. Brandon's attorney slid a document forward. Then we'll begin with the signature comparison. Warren's mouth tightened. For the next hour, papers moved across the table like evidence in a courtroom drama I never wanted to live inside. Loan guarantees, business credit extensions, email logs, IP records, electronic submission histories, documents accessed from Mills Home Solutions, documents submitted through Warren's administrator email. My name, Brandon's name, again and again. Each page was another door opening into a room Warren had kept locked. Warren tried to explain everything as pressure. The business was struggling. Vendors were threatening lawsuits. I was trying to keep employees paid. I believed I had family support. Linda finally looked up. Believing your family would support you is not the same as obtaining their consent. Warren's face reddened. You people keep acting like I stole from strangers. This was my wife, my son. The room went silent. Ms. Alvarez wrote something down. I stared at Warren. That sentence told the whole truth. Not strangers. My wife. My son. As if our closeness made the violation smaller instead of worse. Brandon spoke before I could. That makes it worse, Dad. Warren turned on him. You don't understand what it takes to build something. No, Brandon said, voice shaking but clear. I understand what it feels like to have my name used without permission. Warren's eyes narrowed. Your mother has poisoned you. I felt Linda's hand move slightly, a warning for me to stay calm. But Brandon did not need me to answer. No, he said. You did. For the first time, Warren had no immediate response. Then the conference room door opened. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the doorway wearing a red coat, large sunglasses pushed up on her head, and the expression of someone who had not come to be polite. Denise Harper. Warren shot to his feet. What are you doing here? Miss Alvarez frowned. This is a private mediation. Denise looked at Warren, then at the mediator. I was asked to provide documents. Linda's eyes flicked toward me. I had known Denise might submit evidence. I did not know she would appear in person. Mr. Keller looked furious. This is inappropriate. Denise laughed once. So was being told I was investing in a stable business while Warren used everyone's name like spare keys. Warren stepped toward her. Denise, don't. She looked at him coldly. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. That sentence landed harder than she probably intended, because I knew exactly how it felt to say it. Ms. Alvarez allowed Denise to provide documents through the attorneys. She did not sit at the table, but she stood near the door while Linda reviewed the packet. There were text messages, emails, bank screenshots, a copy of a check Warren had asked Denise to deposit into a business account, and one message that Linda read aloud. Denise Kara won't be a problem. She signs whatever I put in front of her. The room went still. My skin went cold. Warren closed his eyes. There are sentences that do not just hurt, they clarify. For 32 years, I had wondered if Warren saw me as weak, foolish, convenient. Now I had the answer in his own words. She signs whatever I put in front of her. Linda placed the page flat on the table. Mr. Mills, she said, do you deny sending this message? Mr. Keller touched Warren's arm. Do not answer. But Warren was staring at Denise. You saved that? Denise smiled without warmth. I saved everything after you asked me to move money through my account. Mr. Keller whispered urgently to Warren. Brandon looked sick. I sat very still. Not because I felt nothing, because I felt too much, and I refused to let Warren see any of it spill. Denise looked at me then. For the first time since I had seen her photo with Warren at that steakhouse, we were face to face. I expected triumph in her eyes, maybe shame, maybe pity. Instead, she looked tired. "He told me you were unstable," she said quietly. "I said nothing. He said you abandoned him, that you were hiding money, that he had carried you for years." Warren snapped Denise. She ignored him. "He said a lot of things." Her voice hardened. "Then he asked me to sign something I didn't understand. That's when I started saving messages." I looked at her. "You left because he tried to use you too." "Yes." There it was. Not friendship, not forgiveness, but truth. And truth does not always arrive from people we like. Sometimes it arrives wearing a red coat and carrying receipts. The mediation shifted after that. Warren's attorney asked for a break. During the break, I stepped into the hallway. Ruth stood immediately. Well, I looked at her. Denise came. Ruth's eyebrows rose. "Lord, the plot thickens." She brought messages. Good ones bad for Warren, then good ones. I almost smiled. Then I leaned against the wall and let myself breathe. Brandon came out a minute later. His face was pale. "Mom," he said, "I'm sorry. You already said that." "No, I'm sorry I believed him so easily." I looked through the glass wall at Warren, who was now arguing with his attorney in a low, furious voice. "We all believed him too easily," I said. Brandon shook his head. "Not Grandpa." That stopped me. He was right. My father had seen Warren clearly, and for years I had carried his warning in a box I never opened. When we returned to the room, Warren looked smaller. Not sorry. Smaller. There is a difference. Ms. Alvarez asked whether Warren was prepared to discuss responsibility for the disputed debts and removal of my name and Brandon's from all obligations. Warren's attorney began speaking carefully about cooperation review and avoiding escalation. Then Warren interrupted. "This is ridiculous." Mr. Keller closed his eyes. Warren pointed at me. "She has money. More than enough. Her father left her money she hid from me. She could fix this today if she wanted." There it was. The real reason he had come. Not remorse. Not repair. Access. Linda's voice cut through the room. "Mrs. Mills's separate inheritance is not available to resolve debts created through alleged unauthorized signatures." Warren slammed his hand on the table. "She was my wife." Miss Alvarez's voice sharpened. "Mr. Mills." But I was already standing. For a second, everyone looked at me. I had spent most of my marriage sitting down when Warren got loud. "Not anymore." "Yes," I said. "I was your wife." My voice was calm. "That meant you should have protected my name, not used it. It meant you should have told me the truth, not forged my trust. It meant when you were scared, you should have come to me as a partner, not treated me like a signature you owned." Warren stared at me. I continued. "You told me I would never survive alone. But you were the one who couldn't survive without using other people." No one spoke. Even Linda looked at me differently. Warren's face twisted. For a moment, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he whispered, "You think you're better than me now?" I shook my head. "No. I think I finally know I'm not beneath you." That was the moment the room changed. Not legally, not officially, but emotionally. The power Warren had carried for decades cracked in front of everyone. By the end of the mediation, no final settlement was reached. Warren refused to admit wrongdoing. His attorney requested more time. Linda expected that. But something important did happen. The lender agreed to pause collection efforts against me while the signature dispute was investigated. Brandon's attorney filed a similar dispute. Denise's documents were entered into the record. Warren was instructed not to contact me or Brandon directly about the debts. When we left, Warren stood in the hallway alone. For once, no one rushed to comfort him. No wife, no son, no Denise, no audience. Just a man surrounded by the consequences he had created. As I walked past him, he said my name, Kara. I stopped, but I did not turn fully. His voice was low. You're enjoying this. I looked at him then. No, Warren. I survived you. Don't confuse that with enjoyment. Then I walked out. Ruth was waiting by the elevator. She handed me my coat. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Not happy, not healed, not finished, but clear. I feel like the truth finally entered the room, I said. Ruth pressed the elevator button. And did it behave itself? I looked back once at the conference room doors. No, I said. It knocked things over. Warren disappeared for 9 days after the mediation. No emails, no calls, no messages through Brandon. At first, the silence felt like relief. Then it began to feel like weather before a storm. Ruth noticed it too. He's not done, she said one afternoon while helping me arrange client folders in my little back office. I know. Men like Warren don't go quiet because they've accepted defeat. They go quiet because they're choosing a new door to kick. I wanted to believe she was wrong. She wasn't. On the 10th day, Linda called me. Kara Warren's attorney contacted me. My stomach tightened. What does he want? A settlement meeting. We already had mediation. This is different. Warren says he is prepared to discuss admission debt responsibility and removing your name and Brandon's from disputed obligations. I sat down slowly. That sounds too reasonable. It may be, or it may be desperation. What changed? Linda paused. The lender received Denise's documents. They also received the electronic submission history. Warren's attorney knows this could escalate beyond civil liability. Beyond civil liability. I understood what she meant. Criminal. The word hung in the air, even though she did not say it. Does he want money? I asked. Yes, of course. Linda continued. He is asking whether you would consider contributing funds to prevent the business property from foreclosure while he restructures. I laughed once. It came out cold. He forged my name, humiliated me, tried to drag Brandon into debt, and now he wants me to save his building. I told his attorney not to expect that. Good. But Kara, I need you to think carefully. Not about saving Warren. About what outcome gives you the cleanest freedom. That sentence stayed with me after we hung up. Cleanest freedom. For months, I had imagined freedom as a door slamming shut. But Linda was right. Sometimes freedom was paperwork. Terms. Signatures reviewed by someone who actually protected you. A settlement that removed your name from poison before it spread. The meeting was scheduled at Linda's office. This time, Ruth waited in the lobby again. Brandon came with his attorney. Warren arrived last. He looked worse than he had at mediation. His suit hung loose. His eyes were bloodshot. His confidence had thinned into something brittle. When he saw Brandon, his face tightened. When he saw me, something flickered across his expression. Not love, not regret. Need. We sat around Linda's conference table. Warren's attorney began speaking first, carefully outlining possible terms. Warren would cooperate with the lender's investigation. He would sign sworn statements that neither I nor Brandon knowingly authorized the disputed guarantees. He would accept responsibility for the business debts tied to Mills Home Solutions. He would cease all direct contact about financial matters. In exchange, he wanted two things: time and money. Not from Brandon, from me. His attorney phrased it politely. A short-term private loan from Mrs. Mills could allow Mr. Mills to prevent immediate foreclosure, preserve remaining business assets, and avoid further harm to all parties. I stared at the man. A private loan, I repeated. Warren leaned forward. Kara, please. That word sounded strange in his mouth. Please. He had used commands for so long that humility did not fit him naturally. I am not giving you money, I said. His jaw tightened, but he held himself back. I'm not asking for a gift. You are asking me to fund the consequences of your fraud. His attorney shifted uncomfortably. Warren's voice cracked. If the company collapses, people lose jobs. Linda spoke before I could. The company's collapse is not Mrs. Mills's responsibility. Warren looked at me. For once, he did not perform for the room. Kara, I'm begging you. There it was. 6 months after telling me I would never survive alone, Warren Mills sat across from me and begged. I thought it would feel satisfying. It didn't. It felt heavy. Because the man begging me was still the man who had broken me. And some small, old part of me still remembered making his coffee, ironing that gray suit, praying his temper would pass. But memory is not a contract. I folded my hands on the table. You want my help? Yes? Then listen carefully. He nodded too quickly. I will not give you money. I will not sign anything for you. I will not protect your reputation at the cost of my safety. I will not ask Brandon to soften the truth to make you feel less exposed. His face fell. But I continued, I will agree to one thing. If you fully cooperate, if you sign sworn statements clearing my name and Brandon's, if you provide every document Linda requests, and if you stop contacting us directly, I will not push for more than what is necessary to protect myself. Warren stared at me. What does that mean? It means I am not here to destroy you. His eyes searched my face, suspicious even of mercy. I don't believe you. That is because you confuse restraint with weakness. Brandon looked down at the table, but I saw his mouth tighten like he was holding back emotion. Warren swallowed. And if I don't agree? Linda answered. Then we proceed with disputes referrals and any remedies available. Warren's attorney leaned toward him and whispered. For several minutes, the room was quiet. Then Warren looked at Brandon. Son. Brandon lifted one hand. No, don't. Warren froze. Brandon's voice shook, but he kept going. Don't call me son only when you need me to feel guilty. Warren looked wounded. Maybe he was, but wounded men can still be dangerous when they refuse to see who held the knife. I did everything for this family, Warren said. No, Brandon replied. You used that sentence to get away with everything. The room went still. Warren looked at me then, as if expecting me to stop Brandon. I did not. That was another kind of freedom. Warren finally signed the preliminary agreement to cooperate. His hand shook. Not much, but enough. When the meeting ended, he remained seated while everyone gathered their papers. His attorney looked relieved. Linda looked cautious. Brandon looked exhausted. I stood. Warren said my name. Kara. I paused. He did not look angry now. Just empty. Did you ever love me? He asked. The question struck me harder than I expected. For a second, the room disappeared, and I saw us young again. Warren laughing in a cheap apartment kitchen. Warren holding newborn Brandon. Warren dancing with me once at a county fair when the band played an old song we both knew. Yes, I said. His eyes reddened. Then how can you do this? And there it was. Even now he thought love meant rescue. I looked at him for a long moment. Because I loved you for years while abandoning myself. I won't do that anymore. He looked away first. Outside, Brandon walked me to my car. Ruth stood nearby pretending to check her phone while clearly listening. Mom, Brandon said, "Thank you. For what? For not destroying him when you could have." I looked toward the office building. I don't want my life to be built around destroying Warren. But he deserves consequences. Yes, I said, and he will have them. But consequences are not the same as revenge. Brandon nodded slowly. I'm trying to understand that. So am I. A week later, Warren's sworn statement arrived. Linda read it to me over the phone. Warren admitted that I had not knowingly authorized the disputed business guarantee. He admitted he had managed communications with lenders without my knowledge. He admitted Brandon had not knowingly agreed to the documents under review. The language was careful, legal, not emotional, not enough for the wound, but enough for the record. My name began to come off the debts. Brandon's attorney started the same process for him. The lender continued its investigation into Warren and the business. Mills Home Solutions did not survive. By the end of the month, the business property was listed for sale under pressure from creditors. 2 former employees found work with another contractor. 1 supplier filed suit. Warren moved out of the big house before foreclosure proceedings could finish and rented a small apartment near the edge of town. I learned all of this through Brandon, not because I asked, because Warren's fall had become impossible to hide. One evening, I stood in my kitchen washing a coffee mug when my phone buzzed. An email from Warren. For a moment, my whole body tensed. Then I opened it. Kara, I signed what they asked. I hope that is enough for you. Warren. I stared at the words. No apology, no full confession, no understanding, just resentment dressed as surrender. The old Kara would have written back. She would have explained, defended, tried to make him see. The woman standing in my kitchen did not. I forwarded it to Linda. Then I deleted it from my inbox. Ruth came by later with lemon cookies and found me sitting on the back steps. You all right? I think so. You look sad. I am. About Warren. About all of it. She sat beside me. The evening air smelled like cut grass and rain. My little garden was still mostly weeds, but a few yellow flowers had started pushing through near the fence. I thought winning would feel cleaner, I said. Ruth nodded. That's because it wasn't a game. It was your life. I looked at the flowers. I don't hate him, I know, but I don't want to save him. Ruth smiled gently. That's the line, Kara. Right there. I breathed in slowly. For 32 years, I had confused love with rescue peace, with silence, marriage with endurance. Now Warren was facing what he had built, and I was facing what I wanted to build next. The difference was this time, no one else held the blueprint. Spring came quietly to my little house, not all at once. Not like a movie scene where flowers bloom overnight and every wound disappears with the sunshine. It came in small pieces. A warmer morning, a robin on the fence, yellow flowers pushing through the stubborn weeds behind my kitchen window. I liked that. Healing, I learned, did not arrive with music. It arrived while you were paying bills, making coffee, folding towels, answering emails, and realizing you had gone 3 whole hours without thinking about the person who broke you. By then, the legal storm around Warren had settled into consequences. Mills Home Solutions was gone. The business property had been sold under pressure from creditors. The company trucks disappeared from the lot. The sign with Warren's name came down on a cloudy Friday morning, according to Brandon, who drove past it on his lunch break, and sat in his car for 10 minutes afterward. I thought I'd feel happy, he told me later. And did you? No? He said. I felt like I was watching my childhood get hauled away. I understood that. Even painful homes have memories in the walls. Warren did not go to prison, at least not then. Linda explained that the lender and attorneys had reached civil resolutions on several disputed documents. Some matters were still under review, and Warren had accepted responsibility for certain debts in writing. My name was removed from the obligations. Brandon's name was cleared from the documents he had never authorized. It was not perfect justice. Real life rarely is. But it was enough to free us from the trap Warren had built. He moved into a small apartment outside Columbus. Brandon saw him once at a gas station and said Warren looked older, thinner, and angry at the world for noticing. Did he say anything? I asked. Brandon nodded. He said, "Your mother got what she wanted." I looked down at my tea. What did you say? Brandon gave a small, sad smile. I said, "No, Dad, she got away." I had to turn toward the window so he would not see how deeply that touched me. My relationship with Brandon did not magically repair. There were awkward dinners, long silences, conversations where he apologized again, and I had to tell him that apologies were welcome, but trust needed time. Melissa came over one afternoon with a pie from a bakery and eyes full of shame. I believed the wrong person, she said, before I could even invite her to sit. That mattered. Not because it fixed everything, because she did not start with excuses. She told me she had seen Warren as strong, decisive, successful. She had mistaken his control for leadership the same way I had once mistaken it for protection. "I should have defended you," she said. "Yes," I answered. She nodded, crying. "I know." I let her cry. Then I gave her coffee. That was not forgiveness yet. But it was a beginning. My work grew faster than I expected. Kara Mill's personal paperwork support became more than a side job. The library workshops filled up. Churches invited me to speak. A senior center asked me to run a monthly session called Know What You're Signing. Ruth teased me that I needed business cards with bigger letters because half our clients refused to wear their reading glasses. Women came with folders, shoeboxes, plastic grocery bags full of statements and years of fear. Some had been widowed and did not know where the accounts were. Some were divorced and ashamed. Some were still married and afraid to ask questions. I never told them what to do with their lives. I simply sat beside them and said, "Let's look at the papers together." Sometimes that was the first kind sentence they had heard in months. One Saturday morning after a workshop, Helen Porter hugged me and whispered, "You turned your pain into a lantern." I carried that sentence home like a gift. That evening, I stood in my backyard with Ruth while Brandon fixed the leaning fence. Melissa was inside washing cups. The air smelled like grass coffee and fresh paint from the little office I had finally finished. Ruth looked around and said, "You know this place suits you. It's small. So I used to think a big house meant I had succeeded." Ruth snorted. "A cage can be big too." I laughed. Then I looked through the kitchen window at Melissa drying dishes, at Brandon tightening screws in the fence, at the folders stacked neatly on my office desk. For the first time in a long time, my life did not feel like something I was waiting for someone else to approve. It felt like mine. A week later, Warren sent one final letter through his attorney. Not an email, not a text, a letter. Linda forwarded me a copy. "Kara, I know you probably won't believe anything I say now. Maybe I don't deserve that. But I want you to know I understand that I went too far. I was under pressure, and I made choices I cannot undo. I lost the business. I lost the house. I lost Brandon's trust. I suppose I lost you long before I admitted it. I don't know how to be the man you needed. Warren. I read it 3 times. There was still too much excuse in it, too much self-pity, too little ownership. But there was one sentence that felt almost true. I lost you long before I admitted it. Yes, he had lost me in small ways for years, every time he mocked my questions, every time he made me feel foolish for needing information, every time he called control responsibility, every time he confused my silence with agreement. The night he threw me out was not the moment he lost me. It was the moment I finally saw that I was already gone. I did not reply. Some doors do not need to be slammed. Some simply stay closed. On the 6-month anniversary of the night Warren told me I would never survive alone, I woke before sunrise. I made coffee, wrapped myself in a sweater, and sat on my back steps. The sky was pale blue. The yard was still imperfect. The fence leaned less now, but not perfectly straight. The garden had more weeds than flowers. My house needed repairs I had not yet learned how to make. But it was peaceful. No one was yelling. No one was measuring my worth by what I did not know. No one was holding my life hostage behind passwords. My phone buzzed, a message from Brandon. "Morning, Mom. Just wanted to say I love you. Thank you for not giving up on yourself. I'm learning from you." I held the phone against my chest and cried. Not the kind of crying I had done in the motel. This was different. This was grief leaving through a door. Later that day, I hosted my largest workshop yet. 52 women sat in folding chairs at the community center. Ruth stood in the back, proud as a general. Helen sat in the front row. Melissa helped hand out folders. Brandon carried boxes from my car without being asked. I stood at the podium and looked at those women. Silver hair, tired eyes, nervous hands, strong faces. Women who had survived marriages, losses, betrayals, illnesses, children bills, secrets, and silence. "My name is Kara Mills," I began. 6 months ago, someone told me I would never survive alone. The room went still. I smiled. He was wrong. A few women laughed softly. Some cried. I continued. "But I want to tell you something important. Surviving alone does not mean doing everything without help. It means knowing you are still whole, even when someone walks away. It means learning, asking, checking, protecting your name, protecting your peace, protecting the part of you that still believes tomorrow can be different." Ruth wiped her eyes and pretended she had allergies again. I looked out at the room and thought of my father's box. The motel, the diner, Warren's forged signature, Brandon's apology, my little house, my locked doors, my open windows. Then I said the words I wished someone had said to me years earlier. You are not helpless just because someone kept you uninformed. And you are not too old to begin again. The room rose to its feet. Not for me, for themselves. And as I stood there listening to the applause, I finally understood the truth Warren never could. I had not survived because I was alone. I survived because I stopped abandoning myself. Sometimes the person who says you cannot survive without them is really afraid of who you will become once you stop believing them. Kara's story is not just about a broken marriage. It is about the quiet ways people lose themselves when love becomes control, when silence becomes survival, and when fear is mistaken for loyalty. But it is never too late to ask questions. It is never too late to learn what your name is attached to, what your rights are, what your heart has been carrying, and what kind of life you still deserve. Starting over at 58, 68, or even 78 does not mean you failed. It means you are still alive enough to choose peace. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone underestimated you? I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. If you believe stories like this can help someone feel less alone, please like this video, subscribe, and stay with us for more emotional stories of truth, courage, and second chances.